Okay, so this is my video response to the TED Talk we were supposed to watch for class, and I really enjoyed the video. I wouldn't say that really like changed any of my views that I had. If anything, kind of just enforced some that I already kind of believed or supported before. While here, I won't. I'll leave that on to start the video. So I took some notes. I really appreciated the guy's emphasis that he put on not deleting or taking out any form of art, and instead just kind of amending things we already know or adding to things you already know. I think that's a really healthy way of dealing with the kind of problem that's arising right now with the disparity between representation of whether it be white people to black people or whether it be women to men in art or public statues or stuff like that. I think that's probably the healthiest way to treat that is not to try to take away things and make it act like it didn't happen or not. And in the case of Confederate statues, you make it seem like it never happened, but instead just to add to it, and so there's more representation of the population of the country. So it's not just white men and a lot of the statues that we see, or it's not just or that these depictions, like they said in the video, these depictions of colored people or anything like that. I feel like that's the wrong term, and I feel bad. But I don't know. I really appreciated the fact that he said that he didn't put an emphasis on just destroying stuff, and instead just amending or adding to stuff that already exists to make it more equitable for all people, all races, all genders, and stuff like that. I put that it's a realistic and healthy way of moving forward. I kind of already addressed that. Different more sources. Yeah. So just I think right now we're kind of going through this kind of like cultural revolution of a sorts of just becoming more socially justified as a culture as a whole, and so that's why these complaints and stuff have arisen. And while I honestly do understand people's reservations in defense of things like tearing down Confederate statues, because I do understand that that can really be upsetting for some people, or just any statues in general. I just think that this is the best way to go about it, is to add more stuff, to add more stuff and make it more diverse instead of taking other things down and try. It just seems like it's a win-win if we just add more instead of taking some away. So kind of just I feel like I've kind of been talking about both a lot. But just for the statues in general, I actually, in one of our forum posts that we posted earlier, I commented on the fact that in downtown Wilmington, where I'm from, there are three different actually they're not public, but there's three different statues honoring Confederate people or people who died at Fort Fisher or stuff like that throughout the city. And it doesn't really, I wouldn't say that it bothers me. I think it's interesting in a city like Wilmington that's so diverse and so culturally has so many different facets to it, that is the only representation that there is. Granted, these are not public monuments. All of them are built by an organization called the Daughters of the Confederacy. But they're in public places. Two of them are in intersections, and then one is in one of the more popular cemeteries, which sounds weird, but it's kind of like an outdoor museum almost. It's not really just a cemetery. But it's interesting to see that when, like we learned in this class, and I've learned before, or we might have all learned before, there was things like the Wilmington race riots, and the only coup d'etat to ever happen in American history happened in Wilmington because of racist reasons, or racist forces caused it to begin with. So I actually put in my forum post a couple weeks ago that I think that while there's no statue in Wilmington that honors the people that started the race riots or the coup d'etat, of course, but I think that'd be really cool that, for instance, to start the race riots, what happened was they burned down the newspaper press of Alexander Manly, who was a black man who owned the newspaper press, and he published an article defending black men, and kind of like he had a problem with how they were being portrayed in other newspapers, and they was just really unfair. So he published his own article saying like, hey, this isn't cool. I think it should be treated differently. And then so his newspaper press was the first thing that was destroyed in Wilmington in the race riots. I think it'd be really cool to have a statue of Alexander Manly in downtown Wilmington. Even it would be cool to have it like where his newspaper press was, but anywhere in Wilmington, I feel like that's a huge thing, and just in the nation's history. So I feel like that would really be an awesome public monument to build to kind of do what the person who's the man of this video, whose name I cannot remember right now, was talking about. Where I'm not saying that we need to tear down the Confederate ones, definitely, because they're not public monuments, they're technically privately built, but I do think there is room for a more equitable representation of all people, and not just the ones that are already there. And then kind of a last note, I've actually heard about this been talked about before, and I'm curious to see if it takes more of a presence in the media as this whole conversation goes on with different statues and stuff like that, is women in statues in the U.S. A lot of times you see statues of women don't really get names. For instance, the Statue of Liberty, or the Three Graces, which is a statue I'm not even really familiar with, but these are women statues that aren't even like given names. Although they're women, they're not like, I mean, we have the Lincoln Monument, we have all these ones that are named after, like, of men, and women don't really get as much representation. And then to go along with that, of the approximately 5,193 public statues depicting historic figures in the U.S., only 394 of them are of women. So, like I said, that's not all statues, because like that's just publicly built ones, so ones built by the government, but still, that's a huge disparity in numbers. And so I'm interested to see if this kind of emphasis being put on the fact that women are really kind of left out as far as statue building goes, if that starts getting more emphasis or getting more attention paid to it, because I think it's just as important to recognize that as it would be to recognize racial disparity or anything like that. I feel like I rambled a lot in this video, but it's kind of like my biggest things. I really, really respect it, and I really support how that guy's view on adding to the diversity, or adding to and amending art or amending history, instead of just destroying things and replacing them or not replacing them. I think that's a much healthier way of dealing with it. And I think I would just love to see in general more statues of black men, or black people in general, black women. There's plenty of stories of strong, influential black women in history, and even Wilmington and North Carolina history as well, and just women in general in the U.S. So thanks for watching. This has been an absolute blast to record.